Hey there, welcome to my channel. My name is Gina Govaz. Thanks for being here. So today I'm going to talk about Scorpio as the 8th stage of our evolution, the essence of the sign as an embodied archetypal expression. I'll talk about the sign that comes before and after Scorpio and the Taurus and Scorpio axis. That will help us gain a deeper understanding of what this stage of development represents. And with Mercury and Mars in Scorpio, now is actually a great time for deep exploration and shadow work. So I'll talk a little bit about that, why you would want to do it, and some ways to do that. So Scorpio is a fixed water sign and the 8th sign of the zodiac. So the zodiac as stages of our evolution, this would be the 8th stage of our evolution. So we can gain a richer understanding of this sign when we consider the sign that comes before Scorpio, which is Libra. So as we progress through each sign, beginning in Aries with the phrase I am, we have this sense of self-awareness. So on the opposite end of Aries, we meet Libra, the 7th sign of the zodiac, representing the 7th stage of our evolution. So Libra is a cardinal sign, and cardinal signs have this initiating quality as they mark the start of a new season. So Libra initiates us into relationships. So at this stage, we recognize that we are that there are others just like us. We learn to relate. Where in Aries, we understand the self. Libra is where we understand the other. So it's the axis of the self and the other. So Libra is an air sign, and air signs have this connection to the mind. So it's this socialization aspect of connecting with others. It operates on the mental and social sphere. So it is left brain, it is masculine function. So this expression moves up and out. And air signs have this objectivity. And so at this stage, we recognize others as individuals that just like us have feelings and ideas and preferences. And as the 7th sign, it resonates with the 7th house themes, those being partnership, marriage, and the significant connections. And then after the 7th sign, after Libra, we enter Scorpio. So this is the 8th sign and the 8th stage of our evolution. So from air, we are now in a water sign. So the fixed signs are in the middle of the season. So this is where we sustain the energy and maintain what the cardinal sign has developed through identity. So we're really expanding on the identity by holding the energy. And we take this one-to-one relationship that we established in Libra, and now we take it deeper. And this is a stage where we meet the need for deep involvement and intense transformation. So water is receptive, it is right brain, it is feminine, so it is involutionary. The energy moves down and in. So Scorpio seeks connection on a deep transformational level that is generally more foreign to air signs. This social connection now progresses to a union with another on an emotional level, on a physical level, and on a soul level. So when we explore this from the view of the 8th house, which resonates with the sign of Scorpio, we find the manners in which we fuse and unite with another. So here we find our joint resources. This is where we find what we have, the things that bind people, that bind the connection, that bind the union, our taxes, our debts, inheritance, property, the joint wealth, all the joint resources. And it's also the dissolution of material structure back into energy. So this is the death and transformation. And I share that from the book 12 Houses by Howard Sasportas. And we also see this in the natural rhythm of day and night, sort of this death and rebirth that happens. We see it in the cycles of the season. So here in the northern hemisphere, it is autumn. So there's this seasonal death that begins to happen at this time of year as we, move closer to winter. The leaves are falling from the trees. It starts to get colder. It gets darker earlier. And we can also gain a broader understanding of Scorpio when we look at the opposite sign, Taurus. So that would be the 2nd sign of the zodiac. And again, it resonates with the second house. So Taurus is a fixed earth sign. So as the second stage of our evolution, in Aries, we understand the I am. Well, in Taurus, we come into a body. It's an earth sign. So it is very embodied. It is living through the senses of taste and touch and smell. We learn what it is to be in a body. And it's also about the personal experience, right? It is my values, my money, my resources, my sense of self-sufficiency and stability. And so on the opposite end of the axis, we have the merging and the union with the other's resources and values and body and soul. So it's where we form that intimate connection. And again, coming back to Howard Sasportas, what he shares, it's, we share parts of ourselves that are normally kept hidden. This is very much an eighth house theme, and also a water theme. Water is the emotional and more private plane, where through sex and intimacy, we experience a form of self-transcendence. In the heights of ecstasy, we can forget and abandon ourselves to merge with another. So the sign of Scorpio resonates with the planet Mars, which is transiting Scorpio until November 4th. So really look to the house that holds Scorpio in your birth chart. This is actually being highlighted during this season. So Mars has this fiery quality. It's a fire of life. It's our life force energy. So how would this express in water? In medical astrology, Scorpio is linked to the reproductive organs, which are tied to our sacral energy center, which is sexuality and creativity. Mars is the raw, primal impulse nature. So it's physical and it's actionable. It's our capacity to act. It's our will. It's how we assert ourselves. And it's also our capacity to act towards our desire nature. So this would be the intense emotion. And Mars is one directional and it is focused. So the emotional plane runs down and it runs deep. And as a fixed sign, Scorpio has staying power and determination. And the point is to be in that flow, to be in that state as long as you can feel that sense of aliveness and feel the intensity and life force energy. So Scorpio as an embodied archetypal expression is really here to feel all the feelings, to face all the feelings, and then to really go to the edge of aliveness. And that is from overwhelming fear, compulsive passion, from agony to an all-encompassing love of creation. And I share that from Stephen Arroyo's book, in his handbook of chart interpretation. And again, I also love to share from Turning of the Ages Mystery School. The creator, Daniel Giamario, says that sometimes we don't know the edge until we go over it. And that's how we learn. And that's actually part of the initiation process for Scorpio. And under this Turning of the Ages Mystery School paradigm, this is especially significant if you have Scorpio on any of the angles, Scorpio rising, if you have a Mars or Venus in Scorpio, and if you have Jupiter in Scorpio. And at its highest expression, one is here to gain mastery. So it is under the sign of Scorpio that we find the shaman and the alchemist. So it's the capacity to feel, to gain mastery over the experience. So it's really learning to surrender, to surrender your beliefs and expectations, outcomes and perceptions, because it is in this surrender that we are in a genuine response to the flow of life force energy. And it's the feeling of allowing this to move through you and to experience it. So in addition to Mars in Scorpio, Mercury entered Scorpio on October 7th, and it will be there until October 30th. Mercury will then enter the sign of Sagittarius and will retrograde back into Scorpio on November the 20th, where it will stay until December 11th. So Mercury is our mind, our communication, our perception, our mind frame. So Scorpio is the first interpersonal sign. So as we brings Sagittarius into this now. Sagittarius is the first transpersonal sign after Scorpio, right? So Scorpio, we merge with another. There's a loss of loss of self, a loss of ego. We understand that we are part of something greater. And so through this process of death and rebirth, we then rise to a broader view. So in Sagittarius, we seek new experiences and growth from what we've learned. So it really is our quest for truth. So now would be a great time. This is the season for deep self-exploration and personal analysis, therapy, and reflection. So it's a good time to consider working with your dreams and shadow work. Can you allow yourself to feel? Can you acknowledge that you feel? Can you sit with what you feel? And can you get curious about it? So Mars, as we said, resonates with Scorpio, and it has this penetrating quality. So it wants to go through the layers of anything that's protective, a protective facade or superficiality, any of these niceties that we present to the world. This is really a time to get honest, and really to get honest with yourself. Because water is the feeling realm, it can become very protective and guarded. And again, we're in the middle of the season. Scorpio has that fixed energy. So we're really holding the energy. So there's this innate need for control when we're working with any of the fixed signs, especially with water. So why do I share this? Why do I think this is important? When we talk about shadow work, because water is the deepest and most primal emotion, and water is where we heal. And this is also where we explore the shadow, feelings that are suppressed, hidden away from our consciousness. Shadow work. With shadow work, we're looking to acknowledge, to recognize the feelings, desires, and instincts that we hide. So can we shed light on this and to bring it out from the dark so that we can heal? And what qualities, do we hide from ourselves? What are we unconsciously projecting out into the world on our partners and friends and colleagues and even strangers? Everyone has a shadow expression. No one is exempt from shadow qualities. All signs have a shadow. And we're in a culture where many feelings are discouraged, and our survival mechanism is to repress or to cut off or to suppress or to deny, and then come into these really unhealthy aspects of control. I share a quote from Carl Jung, who says, "The psyche wants to experience wholeness, so it will attract to itself that which lies within the unconscious. We need to integrate our shadow content by withdrawing it from the outside world and internalize it." So what does that mean? Well, it means that we can ask questions. What qualities do I get triggered by in the outside world that live within me? And when we ask these questions, we just want to bring them to our consciousness. We can hold it to the light, and then we can integrate it. What qualities does someone display that stirs something in you, that sets you on edge or provokes you? So for example, this summer I was out for a walk, and I witnessed this very confrontational, eruptive, abrupt situation between two people. And as I was walking by and I witnessed this, in that moment I just saw in some way these two people mirroring each other. So shadow work would be to explore, what triggered us and why it did. For example, if someone is accusing another of unfairness or aggression or manipulation, might that person also be confrontational and combative and accusatory? Can you ask yourself, where do I express this within myself? Can I find that? And again, this is an exploration. It's a curiosity. We're just trying to figure it out based on these ideas. And if you're in a situation or an exchange, something happens with someone, that would be a great time to kindly and curiously ask, what was happening? What was I feeling? Why did I react that way? Why did that bother me? And another quote that Jung says is, "It's good to know your own darkness. It's the best method for dealing with the darkness of other people." So even exploring this from the birth chart actually is a great way. Looking at natal placements or even transiting planets that are in opposition, for example, because an opposition can be opposing factors within our own psyche. It could be how we meet the outside world, how the outside world meets us, and we're it's an exploration of how is this manifesting in my psyche. And I would even consider the qualities that you see in another that you admire, people that you look up to, or role models. Can you bring that to life within yourself? Can you see those qualities within yourself? Perhaps when we see someone else being a certain way and we feel like bothered or repelled, or even the sense of self-righteousness, what is on the other side of that? That's what I would ask. What is on the other side of that? When we can't imagine that we could be a certain way or act a certain way where we might judge or criticize another, can we get curious about that reaction? And I share from a book called The Vital Spark, Reclaim Your Outlaw Energies and Find Your Feminine Fire. This was written by Lisa Marciano, who is a Jungian analyst. She says, strong feelings we have in response to others often indicate that they are displaying a trait we may need to own and develop in ourselves. Be especially wary of feelings that are toned with judgment, such as outrage, indignancy, or moral superiority. When these arise, it is usually a good sign that we are working hard to hold some disowned part of ourselves at bay. And this is all our work for each of us. It is our own inner work. And it's work that can be done with a therapist that takes a depth psychology approach, or even to share with a trusted friend. And again, when we talk about projecting and sort of these shadow qualities that we see in the world, does it mean that, that you have that quality that you're being triggered by? Does it mean that you have that quality? It doesn't necessarily mean 100% that you have that quality, but what it may be is an exploration as to what is the story attached to this. Like, why is it happening? What do you need to unpack? Perhaps there's a certain belief, an old story that you have attached to it, or there's an old wound attached to that you want to explore and unpack and consider what is the relationship with yourself around this quality and the internal dialogue. And again, something I heard in a podcast with a Jungian analyst talking about the shadow. And she said it's not necessarily the shadow or the darkness itself that is the issue or that causes harm, but it's really the fear of it. So when we give it form and language, we can have a relationship with it. We can assimilate, like we kind of chew on it, metabolize, digest, and assimilate. And when you turn towards it with curiosity, there's an opening. And again, I'll share from Howard Sasporta's book, The 12 Houses. We cannot change anything we refuse to see or we don't know is there. We cannot transform something that we condemn. The darker side of our nature must be brought to light before we can be cleansed, regenerated, or born again. And I really love to view this from the Venus cycle. For example, the planet Venus, she's hidden from the view. She's hidden from our view as she passes behind the sun. So it's kind of going into this underworld, and then we rise again. So on a symbolic level, Venus disappears behind the sun to face her shadow, and then she's born again. So can we consciously integrate back into the psyche in more productive ways, these shadow qualities, when we bring them to our awareness? Or can we channel them in constructive ways? Like, is there a constructive outlet? So what are some of these constructive outlets? One of them would be journaling, writing. Like maybe you have a shadow journal where you write about moments where something in you was stirred. What was the emotion? What did you feel? And then explore what part of me needs to be seen? What part of me has been hurt by this? This can even be a conversation with yourself, sort of this call and response, right? Where you can even say, what are you trying to tell me? What do you need from me? There's creative expression, whether it's drawing or painting or dancing, some kind of movement. And we want to do this without judgment or expectation or even editing what is presented. You know, it's really to allow the unconscious to flow and to show up freely. There's also body awareness, or like a somatic release. So when these shadow emotions arise, just noticing where in the body it is that you're feeling it. Somatic breath work, movement, exercise, a workout, even like a mindful movement, like taking a mindful walk can sort of help us to feel what we're feeling rather than trying to intellectualize what we're feeling. And then there's always a ritual, some kind of ritual or a symbolic act where you may write something or burn a letter or plant something or create some kind of ceremony to mark, some awareness, some intention, maybe to mark a passage or an initiation. So my friends, I hope this has been helpful, just kind of highlighting the energy of the season. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being here. I'd love to hear your comments if there's anything you'd like to share, any insights, anything that has come up for you. I'll also share that I do have a few openings until the end of the year for astral consults. You can check that out on my website. You can actually check out all my offerings on my website at ginagovaz.com. I'd also love to hear from you if you have any suggestions, if there's something that you'd like to explore, or even if you're interested in being a guest on my channel. I'd be so happy to connect with you. So until next time, be well.